All right, I'll scoot in here
Yeah.
for the showbiz.
All right.
All right, so yeah.
So now
Hey, look at what we're here with Shotgun Tom Kelly.
that's right. We're talking with Charles right here,
Charles
and what we're doing is we're filling you in on this layout.
Yeah.
First of all, 1948. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because you've been a member of this club for how long?
1980.
1980.
So
Okay.
43 years, I guess.
So Charles has been around a long time. He knows much more about this than I do. But I was told that in 1948, this is where we are now, used to be a two-bedroom house.
Yeah, it was a private residence.
Private residence. And so they bought it for how much?
I think it was around 15 to 18,000, something like. It was a low amount.
Yeah.
It's definitely under 30 for sure.
Right. So anyway, they bought the house. Now tell us how they expanded it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So.
You got to speak up.
Yeah. So what happened is the club at the time in 1948 was in Highland Park.
Okay.
And that's why we're called the Highland Park Society of Model Railroad Engineers, because we were a club. We were based in a hobby shop that was in the club. The club was based in a hobby shop. The owner was really great. He ran it for about 10 years, from 1948 to 1958. And then he said, I'm going out of business, and your layout's shot. Right? So the members were like, this will never happen again. They were livid. So the model railroaders at the time, our founders, they were just totally livid. So about 5 of them got together, pooled their resources, and went looking for a house to buy. And so here in San Gabriel, it was still, a budding community out here. And we found this place in about 1960, 61. And there's an industrial shop next door.
Yeah.
This was residential, and then there's residential next door to the other one. So we went to City Hall and said, hey, we have an idea, but it's not residential. We need to build a light industrial on the back. Can you rezone us? And back then, the City Hall's like, not a problem. Today, it would take an environmental report, and
So the mayor's office, they said, yeah, no problem at all.
No problem at all, yeah.
Okay, continue.
Okay, so once we got the permit, we were in industrial. We had a lot of hardy, strong-working, great generation guys working for the club. One was a carpenter and one was a steel worker. And so they cut off the back of the residential house, just cut it off. And then what they did...
Where the patio was there a patio back?
It was a whole backyard, green
and
grass.
a big backyard, I understand.
Yeah, trees, backyard, wooden fence, everything all back there. So they tore all of that out. They tore every tree out, all the grass. They cut off the back of the house, and then they built the industrial shed all the way around the fence of the backyard to where it is now. And then we had to build a side, because that was the driveway to the street.
Yes.
There was a garage in the back.
Yeah.
In the back corner, and there was a tree growing right in front of the garage door.
Oh my goodness.
That had to be cut out.
Yeah, no kidding.
And actually, few members know this, that the back corner of that wall is the original garage wall that was still there. We cut off all 3 of them.
Is that right?
Yeah,
wow.
So that's still part. So we built the industrial shed, put a big roof on it, and then that was all carpenter work. And then the next guys that came in was the metal workers.
Wow.
So if you walk into the club layout and you look up at the balcony, and you see all that metal work, the layout table is all metal in the same style.
Wow. I like the fact that it is metal, because a man of my age needs to have a really solid surface to get up those stairs.
Right?
So go ahead.
Yeah, so for 42 years, that metal has been holding up and keeping the layout up and running. And we've gone through earthquakes and all kinds of stuff.
And it works just fine.
It's been working
Yeah, I
good.
have the keys to your car, too.
Oh, sure. Oh, did somebody... Hang on.
There you go.
Somebody might be running...
Parking, that's all.
Somebody might run into my car.
Yeah.
How do you turn that on,
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I'll get it for you. Let me get the speakers.
Now we're gonna have... Now they're really gonna hear us.
Now we're official.
Oh, we're gonna take care of business. Hello, test.
Hang on, Tom.
Okay. Hang on, we're gonna get a microphone here for us. Hello, 488-907. Hang on, folks, this is a test. You got to press a button.
As Bill Gates say, no good demo goes unpunished.
Hang on, I just want to make sure you're not. Try it.
You had to win over mine 4
You've done
Boy,
this before.
these people are getting really boring.
Try it.
Hello. Oh, there,
There
we
we
go.
go.
Yes. Oh, turn
Okay,
up
we
just a
we
little
have
bit.
audio now.
What do you want?
Master up. Okay, can
There we go.
488 Can everybody hear me?
What?
It can. Oh, yeah, they're perfect.
There we go.
Now we got some amplification. So anyway, continue.
So yeah, so the layout is all metal, and that has helped us through several of the major earthquakes. We had the Whittier quake and Sylmar quake and so forth. It's also helped in the age because wood shrinks, wood warps, and wood does that. So we have the metal, we have a homosote layer down, and then we have the track all hand laid. The whole
Yes, by the way,
Yeah.
when he talks about the track being hand laid, every tie is individual, and then they put the rail on
every
top of the
spike.
Yes,
Yeah,
with these little miniature spikes.
Yeah, little miniature spikes. The switch machines are hand cut, and the angles are all hand cut. And so it's a level of professional model railroading, that existed then that for a while there's been the ready to run
Yeah, but the Atlas
world.
track.
Yeah. But now we're seeing a resurgence of model railroading. This is
I know that,
This
and
is
I-
fantastic.
As I know for a fact, there's a guy down in San Diego. He actually does the same thing. He lays each tie.
Yeah.
And there's a form that they use, so you don't have to get out there and each tie. But they put the little ties in there, and then you lay it down, and then you put the rail in there, and then you use these little miniature, like a little staple gun,
Yep.
to put these to put the nails in,
Yeah.
or the spikes, I should
The
say.
spikes, yeah, I've seen
Please
it done
forgive
with.
me.
I've seen it done with a needle nose and then a push rod.
Yes,
that you put
yes,
in on
I've seen
each
that.
one, and then use the NMRA gauge as your
Oh
Bible,
yeah, oh
you
yeah.
know, and you go down the track and you test each one, and then you see how it weathers. So you see if it gets larger or smaller.
Well, down in San Diego, where I'm from, I'm with the San Diego Model Railroad Museum down there in Bal Park, very
great
in
layout.
Balboa Park, very near the world famous San Diego Zoo, and so we on our layout, each tie is laid down, and just like you guys,
Yeah.
Because I noticed when I came into the layout here today, I noticed that is probably the way it was done.
Yeah, it was done that way because there really wasn't too many alternatives at the time.
Yeah, they didn't have flex track in those days.
They
huh?
They didn't have flex track, and it was very entertaining. A young man here brought in what he called the blue box of Athern, and I guess that's a collectible thing now because I'm like, oh yeah, I have a whole closet of blue boxes. But he found a blue box and he converted it with a decoder chip, and he's upgraded and he's showing friends here. So I'm like, well, that's pretty cool because you're taking an old technology and you're upgrading it to a more modern DCC technology. So that's
Yeah.
kind of neat.
Now that's another thing I want to talk to you about. I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm just I'm just a visitor in these rooms. You actually can run DCC and DC.
Yes, yeah. So when we proposed the DCC, it was only supposed to be on our narrow gauge, but the electrical guy here and we were starting to say, this is going to be the wave of the future. So we had to make a choice, and NC was the way we decided to go. However, because we're a club and we vote and we're democratic, there were a lot of members who were just too long in the tooth and said, I ain't gonna do what you kids do.
That happens. That happens.
I ain't changing over no new ways for me.
Well, sure. I don't think that's not how we used to do it in the old days.
Yeah. So we voted on it, and the stipulation was, well, we'll try it as long as we can switch back and forth. And that was the club rule. So we started designing a system where you can throw all the switches one way and the layout's DC, or you can run half the layout DC and the other half DCC, or you can throw it all the other way and run DCC.
Well, Charles, I got to tell you, that's the way my layout down there in San Diego. It's not my layout. I'm a member of the club, the San Diego Model Railroad Club. We also run DCC and DC, and they can switch it back and forth. I guess we probably had a few old timers down there that didn't want to switch, but
yeah, it's
they. As a matter of fact, on our layout, we still have DC Day.
Oh, that's cool. I'll
Yeah.
come over then.
Yeah.
Because I'm mostly DC myself. I have one. I think I have two ready to run DCCs.
Oh, there
I
you
have
go.
a full NCE system, but I just haven't run it because I've actually been on hiatus about 10 years from the club. When I came back today, it was like a grand entry in. It was really awesome. Yeah.
Made you feel good, didn't
It
it?
made me feel great. Yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, I lost the train. There's a train. Yeah, I was going to say about some of those old guys. One of the old guys here at the club was named Van Facco. So when I was 20 years old, I was into scenery, and he was the scenery department head. So he and I started working together on more projects. And I did something sacrilegious here at the club.
No.
Yeah. I asked him, can I build a little mill on the side of a mountain? He's like, yeah, you go for it, kid. So I said, okay. So I took a chisel and I broke through the sacred plaster.
Oh, that's bad news.
So sacred plaster is a term we both came up with because after I finished the project, he liked what I did. But it took him a while to get over the fact that, when you build a model railroad, it's made out of steel. You don't change it anymore.
Right.
And I was not of that mindset. I'm a disruptor.
Well, I think I'm the man of audacity myself. Although I didn't do this, but I'll tell you, there was a billboard when I did Morning Drive in San Diego at this radio station, KFMB-FM, and they had these billboards, spectacular billboards, all over town. So I brought one in to my friend Joe D'Elia. Do you know Joe? by
Yes, I
any
do.
chance?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Well, Joe can be. Well, we won't talk about that. but
We can talk afterwards.
yeah. But Joe, I said, Joe, look at this. This is great. He says, well, shotgun, we ought to put it on the layout. Now, our layout is 1949, okay, and below. So, without asking anybody's permission, kind of like what you did with the sacred
Plaster.
yeah.
Sacred plaster.
He went ahead and got a tool out, a drill, and he put my billboard on the layout. Well, now it's my face on the billboard, right? So I'm getting a call from the manager of the layout at night. Hey, who do you think you are? I said, I don't know. What happened? You put your billboard on our layout, which is 1949, and those spectacular billboards were not available in 1949. How dare you? I said, I didn't do it. It wasn't me. Well, who was it? I said, I'm not going to drop a dime on him, but it was Joe D'Elia.
Yeah, Joe was pretty good. I mean, he came up with Proto Power West too, right? And
Yes, I always say to Joe, Joe, you are a captain of industry.
Yeah, disruptor.
He owns Proto Power.
Yeah, we call him at NASA. We call it disruptor.
Yeah, well,
Because
that's what
disruption is not always negative. It can have positive aspects too, like DCC. That was a disruptor.
Now, you worked for, as a matter of fact, when I first came in here to learn about the layout, they said, we got a guy who actually helped shoot people up into the moon, work back with NASA. And
as Tom Greer did help put people on the moon.
Yes, and is a member of this club.
Yeah.
And you're that guy.
No, I'm not Tom.
Oh, you're not Tom.
He puts people on the moon. I put cars on Mars.
Oh, is that right? Is that what you did?
Yeah.
Okay, at JPL.
Yeah. So from the Voyager project, Magellan, Galileo, all the the robotic probes at JPL. That's what I did.
That's what you do,
But,
Charles.
and we were talking earlier before we went on the air about Telly Awards.
Yes, Telly Award.
Because you won a Telly Award.
I won a Telly Award for my HO layout. Johnny Kay, who's going to be here, by the way. He's a television director, and did a beautiful job with green screen and everything. I said, really, you ought to put this in for a Telly Award. It's kind of like an Emmy Award or an Oscar for YouTube people, or if you have an advertising agency and you do a presentation for one of your clients, then you can submit it for an award. And when your video gets an award, it makes it that much better.
Yeah, so we were talking just before, and I said, well, I have a Telly Award too.
Yes, you did. And then I said,
Tell me
how
about
did you?
it, right?
Tell
yeah.
me about it.
Right. So we started off when I was in my 20s. We were doing the structure here at the club, and later in my 20s, about 30s, there was a mission to Venus, and it was called Magellan Mission.
Yes.
And I'm kind of a man of all trades. I was playing music at the time, and I was composing music. And I used a home studio to compose the soundtrack to the NASA documentary about Magellan mapping the planet Venus. And NASA submitted that for a Telly Award.
Is that right?
Yeah, and so I want to, one of those
Sure.
big old Tellys.
They're quite heavy.
They're quite heavy. Yeah. And the Telly I got back in that time, now it's like this giant winged thing.
Yes, that's what we have.
Yeah, mine looks more like an Emmy because it's holding a television in his chest.
Yeah, I've got a picture of that.
Yeah. So that was part of it.
But I'm so proud that my video of my train layout has got a Telly Award, and Johnny K, who's probably going to be here pretty soon, and maybe he can tell us about it. But anyway, back to the trains.
Yeah.
People don't want to hear about the Telly Award.
Oh.
The heck with that.
So
let's talk about trains.
Yeah. So my mentor was Van Facco, and he's got an award up there from the
I see that. Yeah.
from the county up there for what he did. He and I worked together, and he was always like, you got to have a gimmick.
Yeah.
You got to have a gimmick on your layout.
Boy, don't
gotta
you
have
know
something.
I know that.
Right, got to have a gimmick, and always be branding. He would
Yes.
tell me that part too. He gave me this hat. This hat, I'm going to show on the camera, is ancient. This is
That is an original.
this is a
brakeman hat.
1920s Union Pacific passenger brakeman hat.
Wow.
So he has the full. He gave me the full coat, the pair of pants, and the hat, the full uniform of a 1920s Union Pacific.
That's
hat.
great.
So in tribute to him, I like wearing that. And,
Well, there's a place here in Los Angeles. It's a train station, and it's got a museum, and it's also got a layout. Now, do you know what I'm talking about? It's up there. It's near the Reagan, on the way to the Reagan.
yeah, it's Santa Susana.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much. I knew you're a smart man. You know that.
Well, that's a rumor.
Yeah, right. So anyway, they have. I saw one of those hats in that museum.
Oh yeah. You'll find. I'll probably donate it in the museum. I am holding on to one sacred thing that nobody knows I have. Not very many people know.
Well, do tell.
All right. So again, back in the mid '80s, when I was rail fanning, and I was just driving my four-wheel drive anywhere I wanted, I went to the Colton yards, and I was driving in the yards. And I'd be sitting there and waving hi to everybody. There was a couple shenanigans where the guys are blowing Roman candles out of the cabooses as they pass through the yards.
Oh my!
It was really funny. And so I went to the office, and I was hanging around the office, and they were like, "Hey, kid, come here. We got something to show you." I was like, "Uh-oh." And so they came out, and they brought with me an air hose attached to like a Radio Shack metal box that had a battery in it and a flashing red light. And they said, "This is the very first rear end device."
Oh, the Fred.
Yeah, this is the very first.
Flashing rear end device, the Fred.
It's the very first one. It had an air gauge on it, so it was a terminus end with an air gauge.
Right.
And it didn't have any radios in it at the time, but it was just a red flashing light with an air gauge, and they were using that for testing the concept of it.
No kidding.
So I have the first prototype.
Well, let me
Fred.
ask you this. No, this is
I'm
the
going to
link.
donate it some museum somewhere.
You really should,
I
since
should.
it was the first one.
Yeah.
But this flashing red light at the end of every train. Now that used to be on the caboose.
Right. Yeah. So I learned a lot about it because those guys took me into one of the cabooses and they showed me. So the caboose had two purposes. One, they would ride the caboose, and the reason that it has a cupola up above, or Southern Pacific had the sides, is so they can look down the side of the train to look for hot boxes. Mm-hmm. And if they saw a hot box, then they would, before radios, they would have a light on the caboose that faced the engine.
Yeah.
And they would change it to red, which meant, oh God, you got to stop the train. But they also had brake wheels on it. So when the train was going like down some hills, they had the ability to turn on the brakes a little bit and help the train.
See, I did not know that about a caboose.
I didn't know that either until these old guys were telling me all about it. And they were saying this device is the beginning of the end of the cabooses. And I was upset actually at the time.
Oh yeah, well I love the caboose. I mean, my dad, I was the last kid in our family to be born. And my dad, being a railroader, he goes, yeah, little Tommy, he's the caboose of the family. So anyway, let's get back to the Fred. It's very interesting. You have the prototype.
Yeah, the concept.
Which did not have...
It didn't have any radios at the time because it was
And you know what they have now?
the first one.
GPS.
Yeah, they can tell where the train is.
Yes.
And it has all the diagnostics of the air hose and a lot of electronics coming through that.
So that little blinking red light
Yeah.
that you see at the end of a train is really very important to that train.
Yeah, and so the brakeman or the conductor, there used to be 5 people that were on a train. There were 2 in the engine and 3 in the caboose. And the railroads were like, well, we can get this down to 2. So they put a conductor and the engineer in the engines. And that's why the modern diesels have wider cabs. Because now they have bathrooms in the engine. They have a space for the conductor, a little office there in there as well. And now the railroads are trying to get it down to 1 person, just the engineer only.
Yeah, well, my dad was he was a shop steward for the Santa Fe, and he was always fighting for the firemen. You know, he wanted to keep the firemen on. But having going up to Sacramento and sitting in the same engine that my dad sat in, and have the engineer describe what I was looking at, because I didn't know I saw the speedometer and all that stuff. He showed me the brake and that, but what I didn't realize, and I said to the engineer, I said, well, this meter, what's this amperage meter? You got to realize on the old diesels, like the war bonnet, the F7, there was no computers on there.
No.
The engineer, I didn't realize, but my dad had a huge responsibility. Not only running that train, but he had a huge responsibility in making sure that the amperage was correct, because if it wasn't, you could have a fire in those trucks.
Yeah, you could. And we've seen that, especially recently. There's been engines catching fire on the Tehachapi Pass, and so yeah. I don't know if I'm a fan of a 1-person 2-mile long train.
Yeah, and now a lot of the engines are computerized now, right?
Yeah. That's how they can remotely control the helpers at the back, where there's nobody in those trains. So they're totally remote control. And the technology of the Fred, the rear end device with an F.
Yes.
The technology that went into that also went into the helper engines and all engines. So now you see little radio antennas on top of engines, and they can communicate directly. And so it's hard to believe, but sometimes the speed of the back of the train is different from the front of the train.
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, and so for those who may not know, is because as you go over hills, there's slack in the couplers. And so that coupler slack can change as the train navigates. And so that slack is kind of like a little slinky.
Wow, yeah.
And so the rear engines have the ability to control some of that slack, and thus they can run longer trains now, because there's not as much tension to pull the train apart and decouple because of those helper engines. So they do more than just add.
Now let's go back to how many years you've been with this layout.
Yeah, okay.
How many years has it been?
I came here when I was 20 years old, and 1980, and so I'm 63 now. So I think the math would be 43 years.
Okay, let me ask you this. In 1948, when this layout was first set up.
At the hobby shop, yeah.
At the hobby shop. Now, 1948, did they have HO?
Yeah,
They did.
they did.
So
And-
when did they? I thought they just had Lionel.
No. There was HO, and we were talking about earlier the ready-to-run kits,
Yeah.
and then the blue boxes. There was what we called a box of sticks.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah. Oh yeah.
So when you bought a gondola, and you're like, yeah, I got this gondola, and you opened it up, there was no gondola.
Is that right?
No, it was just balsa wood and a couple pieces of
Oh,
pine.
I've seen that. I've seen
It's
those in
just-
those
yeah,
kits.
and you had to use white glue, and you had to put everything together from
Oh
scratch.
yes.
And then later they came out with printed sides, which was the modern thing. So it was like
What year was that?
that was about 1950s and early 60s. They came out with those, and then they started come. Athearn, I don't know who was first, but Atlas and Athearn, started producing the plastic kits, and the technology has changed too. The flanges and the wheels are really deep.
Yeah, right.
Because kids would run them at high speed, and they wanted to keep them on the rails, so they had these flanges.
Catherine started about 55 producing plastic.
There we go.
1955.
1955, Athearn producing plastic, and with the deep flanges. But as the hobby has evolved, the track has been getting better.
Yeah.
The speeds have been coming down
Yeah.
to be prototypical speeds.
Absolutely.
And
That's
so
this.
now the flanges are getting more prototypical, small too, and that's actually improved operations.
Oh
for
yeah,
a
absolutely.
lot.
I don't like people running my train fast. I want scale speed.
Right. So the Addams family.
Oh yes.
Do you remember?
Okay.
Do you
know
remember-
what they call me? Some of my friends who aren't into train. Hey man.
Shotgun crash.
No. Yeah. Well, no. You're. Who's the guy in the Addams family that crashes? Jose.
Uncle Fester.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but the other guy.
Gomez.
Gomez. Yeah, they call me Gomez.
Gomez, yeah.
Hi, and how dare you?
So you would see that about every 2 episodes of the running season. You would see the 2 trains crash on the bridge, and there would be the flames. If you watch again, it is the same crash over and over and over and over.
Is that right?
Yeah.
One take.
Yeah, one take. They used the same crash in every single take. So it wasn't different crashes every time. It was the same
Well,
crash.
let me ask you this. Let's face it. Hollywood has used model trains to create something on the screen. For instance, now you have to be a man of the fugitive.
Yeah.
They have a train. Remember, David Jansen. They had a train crash, and he got out of the car that way. But if you see the first part of the show, that's not really a train derailing. That's a model train.
All right, Shotgun Kelly, you just triggered 2 major memories.
That's what I'm here for.
All right. Many of the club members don't know this. All right, so in that, while we were building this house during the 60s, from 61 to like 66, we couldn't run trains because we were building the house.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so we had train frustration syndrome. That we had to run a train. So there was one of the members who sold us a cargo trailer, and we converted it into a caboose that looked like a
Oh, yes,
caboose.
I saw that in some of the old pictures.
Yeah, and the sides would open up, and we built a train inside there. So there was this rest home not too far, and they were like, it'd be great if you could build a layout for the rest home. And so we did. We built a little small loop-de-loop layout for them, doing our public works.
Yes.
But lo and behold, somebody told Frank Sinatra that we can build model trains. And so Frank Sinatra had his people come to us. And he says, I just bought a place in Palm Springs, and I want you to build a layout for me in Palm Springs.
Is that right?
And so the Highland Pacific members were like, oh God, let's see, we're working on our layout. We have our caboose. It's Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. By the way, I'm a member of the Sinatra Society.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen Frank in concert when he was alive 38 times.
Oh, well, there you
Oh,
go.
yes. I'm a real Frank Sinatra freak. And I got to tell you, I always wanted to go to his place in Palm Springs because I know a few people.
I wonder if it's
But
still-
evidently, I don't know the right people because I didn't get to go.
Well, he found us, I guess, and so we packed up our saws and our tools and our screwdrivers, and over a period of about 4 weeks, we built him a layout in his mansion there at. So who knew Frank Sinatra was a model railroader?
Well, now you just triggered a memory that I have. I understand that members of your club, there's another celebrity who was also a singer, lived in Beverly Hills, was a big Train fan. He was a rock and roll singer, and some of your members went over to build Rod Stewart's layout.
Yeah, actually, I don't know much about that story, so I'm not discounting it because
Yeah.
during that time period, this club was really active in the area. It was unthinkable that a model railroad group would own a house and own property to build their
right.
model railroad. So that kind of made us the first in the country, really, and one of the most unique. That here we had this HO layout, and we bought a house.
Well, I'm glad you did because there are some clubs who they rent a facility, and then after a while, the landlord says, "You know what? I see people coming and going all the time. They must be making some real dough. So I'm going to up the rent." And of course, by that, they have to move out.
That's their death knell. I've seen it in the Pomona Club. I saw the Los Angeles club. They bought their own property because they modeled after us. They were like, nope, we're doing what you guys do. I've seen churches where it was one of the best ones. Oh my gosh, this was a great layout. It was in a basement in La Crescenta, or La Cañada, actually. And in the basement there, and then there was a change of ministers, and that was the change that kicked them out. So,
Well, most recently down in San Diego, in the Old Town part of San Diego, there's a what they call the Old Town Model Railroad Depot, and now they have 3 rails, so it's more the Lionel variety. And a friend of mine, Gary Hickok, owned the place, and he built this beautiful, beautiful model railroad, and he sold it to these people. And so these lovely people came in and took over because Gary also got a slip from the landlord saying, "Hey, I need to. You're using 2 rooms. I need to get more money for this. So either you give me more money or you get out."
Yeah.
And that's a $500,000 railroad that he set up there.
Yeah.
So he sold it to these people.
And when that happens, it's like, well, you just don't want to trash your layout. And so people start coming up with creative ways to take a saw and just cut it in sections,
Yeah, move it out.
move it out, and then you need a place to store it while it's being moved out, and the weather gets to it,
Yeah.
and then if you can find a place to put it back, then you have to incorporate the old track plan into the new spaces.
Right.
And so it's really a detrimental hazard. It's
It
an
is.
occupational hazard for model railroad.
And by the way, the railroad in Old Town San Diego, the lovely couple who bought it, the landlord finally said, "I want you out," and they had to dismantle all those wonderful buildings, one of which was a radio station, and they put me in there and on the air, and so they had to sell all their buildings, and I bought my little radio station, and I have that in what my agent calls the "I Love Me" room in my house.
We had a developer knock on the door and come in with one of our business meetings, and she looked around and she says, "I'll give you $1.2 million for this property right now. No questions asked." Now, according to our club bylaws, we could have sold that, and every month you are a member, you get 1 share of non-transferable stock. So every member has like stock in this organization, and when you die, that evaporates and everybody's stock value goes up. So So the new people, they get some new shares. Their shocks go up every time one of us dies. It goes up. So there was a couple of the younger members who was like, yeah, I'll cash out. I don't
okay,
care.
yeah.
And some of us old guys who would have gotten more money, we were like, no, it's not worth $1.2 million. It's not worth that at all. It's about $12 million.
Wow.
Because when you look at the time and the effort and the materials and the love that we put in this, you can't put a price on that.
No, you really can't. You really can't. And I'll tell you, this layout that you have here is absolutely marvelous. You know what I marvel with you've got the cameras that show where the trains are going, and you have the different rooms up there, the guys that are running the different trains. Can you
Right.
explain that? I'm a little iffy on that.
Sure. So right from the very beginning, we wanted an overview to look at the whole layout. So that was one of the original plans. So we were like, let's put the engineers in the attic of the house. So we cut off the back of the house, built the railroad in the backyard. And so we have 5 mainline trains, and then we have around 8 locals that run, localized yards and so forth. We have 4 local districts that we can break it into, so we can run locals, clear the locals, and run the mainline trains. That's what we're doing now. So we have 2 CTC panels. We have the easy mode.
Now, what is CTC? What is that?
Oh yeah, centralized traffic control.
Oh, okay.
And so we have the one CTC panel is upstairs, and he can see the whole thing. So that's what we call easy mode.
Right.
Because the dispatcher can look down on the layout, and he has situational awareness of the whole thing. However, the club members are like, we don't want to do it easy. We want to do it realistic. So down here on the first room, when you walk into Oh My God Point, there's a model CTC panel that was modeled after.
I saw that.
Yeah, that is modeled after Henry Huntington's Pacific Electric dispatch panel for the red cars down. And so when we're in hard mode, we run that from there. We just throw up giant switch, and then he can't see the layout. He has to listen to the radio calls from the engineers and from the stations on the locals. And so yeah, that's
When Chris
the hard
first
part.
when Chris first opened it up last night, I came in to set up for this personal appearance, and Chris took me in to what you were talking about.
Yeah.
He said, "Okay, now I've got to power up the layout." Okay, so there's this big panel.
Yeah, that's
And
our
he goes,
transformer.
Yeah, and so he's
It's like a nuclear power plant.
Yeah, he's flicking these
on a
switches and
submarine.
he's got these knobs and stuff.
Yeah.
And I go, wait a minute, this reminds me of the days when I first got into radio. And I came in at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I, being the disc jockey on the air, had to turn on the transmitter.
Yeah.
And there were several things that I had to do like that.
Right.
When Chris was doing that, I'm going, my goodness gracious. That is like turning on a transmitter.
It's like the Red October, you're
It really
firing
is.
firing up a submarine or something. So yeah, that's pretty impressive. When I was in my 20s, I looked at that. I'm going, because there's a startup sequence.
Yes.
So you have to press this button, turn the handles this way, then press the secondary buttons, and then engage the whole layout.
Oh, I mean, I was totally blown away when Chris was doing this. I'm going, oh, wow, wait a minute. This looks like a radio transmitter.
I told Van Facco, I said, we should have 2 keys where 2 people need to start it up at the same time. So it looks like a nuclear silo or something.
Well, it blew me away, I got to tell you, man. And, well, first of all, this whole layout blows me away. And I was able to go up to where they run it in the 2nd floor. And it was just tremendous.
Oh, I'll take you on an elders tour. I'll show you things that some of the members don't even know are here.
Well, I am an elder. Well, sure.
I'll take you on the
don't know
$2
too
tour.
Well, Charles, thank you a lot for talking
bet,
with us.
Tom.
I hope I didn't take too much of your time.
Oh, no.
But I think, can we have a round of applause for